Okay, pushers, if I'm keeping record, this should be part three of the 1850s. Behind me over my right shoulder, you can see kind of where we're going to go with all this. So let's get started. Last time we left off, we were basically looking towards, the political connection of the outcome of the American Civil War. So if you look up there at the top, 1853 is a very interesting year in which we set out to try to purchase something to allow for the southern expansion of the Transcontinental Railroad. The first thing you're saying is, well, wait, we haven't built it yet. Exactly. In 1853, we had the Gadsden Purchase, in which we bought the last kind of the southern borders of both Arizona and New Mexico from Mexico for, again, the purposes of allowing for a future Transcontinental Railroad. Side note real quick here, guys. It would have been a little trickier, maybe a little tougher, but we actually had the technology to probably start building the Transcontinental Railroad in 1853. But what we couldn't get over was the political division over where that route would take place. North fights with the idea we want to put it through a northern route, and of course the South's fighting from their side of the Senate and mostly the Senate through wanting to have a southern connection. The Gadsden Purchase just further argumented that process. Now, to really move towards when things get interesting, let's go to our next subtitle, and that is the Kansas-Nebraska Act, or I would like to call it perhaps Popular Sovereignty Goes on Trial. In 1854, pushing through a Kansas-Nebraska Act, Stephen Douglas has engineered, and there's humor in that. If you know, Stephen Douglas basically has purchased essentially the first 100 odd miles that the tracks can be laid upon. And he had inside knowledge of that? Perhaps. He had a political desire to see this go through. In 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act is going to usher in that wonderful two words that you learned from last time, popular sovereignty. Douglas is like, look, Kansas is ready to become a new state, and they're going to decide on perhaps, shall we be a slave state or a free state? And the answer is popular sovereignty. So in 1854, what began as an opportunity to decide, will Kansas be free and will Kansas be slave? Now, what it boils down to, Kansas is going to find help coming from an odd direction here. North and south. Make a note. If you're coming in from the north to help vote in 1854, 55, 56, you're referred to as a Jayhawker. Jayhawkers want a free Kansas. That means free of slaves, a free state. And if you're coming out of the south, you want just the opposite. You want a slave state. They are referred to as bushwhackers. Now, if you can imagine this small congregation all coming together, that's going to be problematic, right? Well, here's the thing. Could anybody foresee the potential trouble that may arise? One guy, Henry Ward Beecher, apparently does, because in 1854 through 1858, it's estimated over 1,000 rifles, Sharps rifles to be exact, were sent into Kansas via Henry Ward Beecher. They came to be referred to as as Beecher's Bibles. My Beecher's Bibles, because Henry Ward Beecher was a preacher of apt knowledge. He grew out of that second great awakening. In fact, the three things he espoused that made him a liberal preacher in the 1850s was, number one, temperance, no alcohol, no drinky. Number two, abolitionists, abolish all forms of slavery, no slaves for you. And number three, what really got him the liberal tag was he supported the idea of women's rights. So all in all, Henry Ward Beecher is thinking, hey, it'd be a good idea to put in some fire support for a free state. One individual we'll meet now is Mr. John Brown. John Brown has it in his mind that he wants also a free state. And he's going to leave his home in the east to travel to Kansas. He'll be a Jayhawker of the highest order. His desire is to see Kansas be a free state. To that end, he is willing to bring his own flesh and blood. His sons will travel with him. All told, there's about 20 men. Mindset is around May of 1856. Word reaches John Brown and his men that in Lawrence, Kansas, there's been a sacking, a shooting, some people being killed, things that were set on fire. Bottom line is, these were anti-slavery individuals. These were adult men that were shot in a firefight, and John Brown believed the law of the Bible. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth for a tooth, and thus it's time to take matters in his own hands. He will lead his converts, his prophets, to a place called Pottawatomie Creek, Kansas. Pottawatomie Creek was the location of some pro-slavery individuals living there. Note, these were not men per se, these were entire families. John Brown, the evening of May 24th, 1856, will go door to door to 5 pro-Southern families. Hey, 5 guys that died in Lawrence, Kansas, 5 are going to die here. Now, the average age of these go somewhere around 12 to 65. And then he took broadswords and split these men's heads and boys' heads open. He then disappeared. He left Kansas, never facing the law or for the crimes that he committed in Kansas. What unfolds between 1855 and really right up to 1861 is what's referred to as Bloody Kansas. And that was nothing short than civil war for the state of Kansas. This inter-civil war of Kansas, starting in 1855 and running to 1861, will involve between 200 and 300 individuals losing their lives in the process deciding, will Kansas be slave? Will Kansas be free? Hey, go ahead and put a note in your note for now. Kansas will have 3 different state constitutions that will form during this period. We'll talk more of these in context in just a little bit. Do want to mention, while the blood of others are dying in Kansas, there's also blood in the Senate. I want to make a sub-note. Let's put this in as the beating of Charles Sumner. Context of this. Charles Sumner was a Republican from Massachusetts and was a diehard abolitionist. And to this end, he took to the floor of the Senate to offer up kind of an argument, a condemnation upon the Bill of Rights. And to that end, he had a particular target, 2 to be exact. One would have been, in general, all slaveholders, and specifically Senator Andrew Butler, who was the chief senator from South Carolina. And in his speech, as he gave this diatribe anti-slavery, he used some very flamboyant, very boisterous language. And to that end, what he put forth was the idea that the South loved their slaves, particularly Andrew Butler loves his slaves. And he kind of painted a picture of almost like a harlot, this idea of embracing them almost in a sexual manner. Controversial to say the least. To that end, that would be very much fighting words. Now, only a few years ago did I first read this and come to understand what he does at the end of his speech. Apparently, Senator Butler was known to have, when he became rather enraged, somewhat of a stutter that would become even more pronounced as he went forward. As he concluded his remarks, Senator Sumner began to emphasize and mock the stuttering. Now, I don't know about you guys, but where I come from, that's going to get you slapped. But in this case, the first cousin of Andrew Butler, a guy we refer to as Bully Brooks, Preston Brooks, a House of Rep from South Carolina, took it upon himself to say, hey, that guy needs a beating. And so he walks in with his walking cane and proceeds to just approach Senator Sumner during a recess, not a recession, that's something different, during a recess, and just starts beating the snot out of the guy, okay? And the long and short of it, Sumner's going to have a little break time because he has to recover from this beating. The outpouring effect was the House of Representatives was going to, quote, censor Preston Brooks. Brooks is like, forget you, man, I'm out of here. And he was. But the good people of his district in South Carolina will return him with a higher vote count than he originally got. And to replace the cane that he broke on Sumner's head, over 150 were sent. Some embroidered with, give him another beating for me, one more whack for Dixie, you name it. Now, what does it show? It shows we've reached the point in 1856 that we can no longer have a debate. We've had the gag rule, now we have beating rule, okay? Senators, House of Reps began carrying pistols and knives into the Senate and House chambers. That's where we are in the end of 1856. Now, step back for just a second here and let's visit a birth. The birth of the Republican Party. We've kind of thrown it around. Now let's get right in there. In 1854, the Republican Party came into being because the death of the Whig Party. Now, if you don't know, the Whigs basically came to a point in 1852 and past 1852 when they ran their last presidential candidate. Good old General Winfield Scott didn't have a dog's chance, but that's a different story. The Whigs are going to split over slavery. Northern Whigs, like Northern Baptists, like Northern Methodists, they're going to split and hang north. Southern Whigs will basically be left to fend for themselves. We'll get more of that in just a second. But the Whigs, in breaking apart, are going to give birth to a new Republican Party. In 1854, the Republicans form pretty much among three groups. First one we've already visited, the Northern Whigs. The Northern Whigs bring to this political party two major ideologies. One, currency supremacy. They'd like to see some type of federal supremacy of currency, some type of federal backing for our country's financial sector. Okay? Bus has been gone since the Jackson era. This is something that they push. Number two, they want to see the improvement of America and its infrastructure. Improvement for mankind. In this case, white mankind. Now, bear with me here how that plays out. The Northern Whigs are kind of the organizers of this party in the first place. Where's the rest of it? Number two. Let's throw them in there, guys, because number two is probably the more important one. And that's a group we refer to as the Free Soil Party. Now, the Free Soil Party actually came out of the germ of an idea that first arrived in 1846. I take you back once again to the Mexican Revolution, not the Mexican-American War. In the midst of the Mexican-American War, a freshman congressman from Pennsylvania by the name of David Wilmot. Wilmot proposed in 1846 what became to be referred to by his last name, the Wilmot Proviso. Okay, what's the Wilmot Proviso? The proviso is this. Any future territories that we're going to gain from Mexico, because we all know we're going to win this war, will be slave-free. What? No slavery into the territories? I don't like it. If I'm a Southerner in the House of Representatives, I'm voting against it. Won't matter. It's going to pass. It passes every time in the House from 1846 to the Civil War. What happens in the Senate? It gets blocked. Okay? So bottom line, the Wilmot Proviso becomes essentially like a little carrot, or rather a stick to the South, a threat to their slavery. The Wilmot Proviso is going to grow teeth from there, and eventually the Free Soil Party forms. They run 1848, 1852, and basically disappear, and you know why, because they're about to become a part of the Republican Party. But the Free Soil Party has one major issue. No slavery in the extension of future Western territories. Bear with us where we are right now. We want infrastructure, we want financial security, and we want free soil for white folks, but mainly we want no slavery into the Western territories. Okay, what else you got? Number three, a very small but very boisterous plank forms the Republican Party in number three. It's a group we refer to as the Know Nothing Party. Now, the Know Nothing Party is a fun little group. They're nativists. They want America for America. The Know Nothings are all about wanting America who currently is in America. They're going to be pretty much anti-Irish, but then who isn't, right? They're anti-Germans. They're anti-anything that's not fully American at this point. So put it all together, in 1854, the Republicans become a very upstart political party because in 1856 they run their first presidential candidate, John Fremont, in 1856 against James Buchanan, and came within a baby's breath of winning the White House their first time out. What did they learn? All we need is the North. If they can win those Northern votes in the Electoral College, they can win the presidency without the South even voting for them. How's that going to play out? See us next time in the next lecture. That'll be it for now.